Good morning, everybody. Right, so we weren't expecting to open the show with this particular panel, Tales from the Floor. We thought this would have been after a few beers, maybe on the last day, but here we go. So hands up who's actually worked on a trading floor or sales floor. Okay, so maybe like a quarter or so. Okay. Hands up if you've heard all the stories from a trading floor or a sales floor, you want to know more. Great. Okay, so let's kick off. So some of the things we'll be talking about today may or may not have happened some 20 odd years ago, as we've kind of gone through the various iterations of the markets and trading, investing, and so on. So on our panel, we actually have different stages and eras, and I think we're going to go kind of age before beauty in terms of the order of things as well. So you can try and guess which way that's going to start. So in terms of the different eras we're talking about, so Clive is kind of like the 1990s, early 80s through to now. Dan was late 90s through to now, and Camilla was kind of mid 2010s through to now, and I'm kind of somewhere in between all of that. So let's start off from kind of left to right. If you can just do a 2-minute introduction about yourself.
Okay. Hi there, my name's Clive Lambert. I am a technical analyst, which is a bloke who looks at charts every day. I've been doing that for 25 years. Prior to that, I did a 10-year stint on the life floor, which was the Futures Exchange in London. So I wore a silly colour jacket, shouted at people for a living, and had an absolute ball. It was the best time ever. I was a stockbroker for a few years before that, and Matt has aged me slightly because he said early 80s. I was still at school in the early 80s. But late 80s onwards is how long I've been knocking around the industry, be it futures, forex, and now mostly my focus, most of my clients are from the energy space. I write reports every day on oil and gas and power and things like that for companies like Shell and BP and Centrica, that kind of thing. Okay.
Camilla?
Hey, so I'm Camilla. I've been in the industry for a decade, so not as much as these gents, but seen quite a few things and lots of things happening, obviously, with MiFID and Consumer Duty. So, yeah, I work for CMC Markets, more precisely CMC Connect, which is the institutional B2B arm of CMC, and 2 months postpartum, so excited to be here with you guys, actually, and feeling like an adult.
Good morning. I'm Dan. I run sales for London Capital Group. I started in the market 30 odd years ago for a French bank, where I started out in the bullion and LME department. If you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll know I famously messed up the Tom next, so a little bit embarrassing. I made my way into spread betting and CFDs in 1999 with FinSpreads, and I've spent 26 years working with some incredible people, working at some fantastic firms, working with some of the biggest clients in the industry, some of the biggest characters in the industry, and yeah, it's been a real privilege, and yeah, I guess that's where we're at.
Thank you very much. And I'm your moderator, Matthew Cheung. I'm currently CEO of ipushpull. So we grab unstructured chat data and automate those workflows. Prior to that, I founded Ransquawk, which is a real-time news service for traders, which now has evolved into Newsquawk. And before that, I had a stint as a futures prop trader back in the day, back in the early noughties. So let's start off. And again, let's kind of start with Clive. How did you get your first job in the city?
I walked around. I mean, this is totally irrelevant for these days. I walked around employment agencies in London, and I got 2 interviews and got 2 jobs. One in insurance, one in stockbroking. Is that my phone? I turned it off. Can't believe it. Shocking behaviour. Right. And so yeah, 2 jobs. So I chose stockbroking and sort of been in this industry ever since. My son is currently just got a job, actually, is 19 years old, and has been interviewing for about the last 3 or 4 months constantly, and it's been really, really difficult. And it sort of made me realise how lucky we were back in those days that we could just, you know, and he was asking me about interview, you know, what about interviews? And I said, well, I don't know, I haven't had one for 30 years, so I'm not sure I can help you, you know. But yeah, it's really a lot harder these days.
Camilla, your first job?
So I kind of stumbled into the industry. I was headhunted because they needed people that spoke a bunch of languages, and I'm not English, so I do. Had no idea what CFDs were. Still don't know. Yeah, it was luck, and it was LinkedIn, something that perhaps back in the days wasn't as popular. But yeah, so LinkedIn, ended up in the industry, worked on retail, and then moved into the institutional side. Completely different kettle of fish, and still do that now.
And Dan, I think you got us probably a story a bit more similar to Clive's.
Yeah, very much so. I'd like to say I got into the industry because of my brains, but it wasn't that.
Was it your looks?
It was actually my movie star looks, actually. Um, no, it was in '94, and I'd just come in from the garden playing football, and my dad said, "You're not going to be a footballer, and you're going to spend your life being a professional paper boy. So you need to get a job." And he knew I was a little bit lazy, so he got the yellow pages out and wrote 250 letters, wrote my CV for me, which he kind of had to elevate the font because there wasn't much to put on it. And one of the things he put as hobbies was socialising, which has probably done me quite well over 31 years, and being a Spurs season ticket holder. I got one interview. I managed to get a job I didn't know I'd applied for in an industry I knew nothing about, doing a job I didn't know anything about either. But being offered £8,500 was a lot better than 50 quid a week. So that's how I ended up getting a job at Credit DNA Rouse 31 years ago.
I guess that's the beauty of the industry, right? Like, it welcomes sort of, I'd like to say anyone, but then in order to succeed, you are able to succeed if you show your capacity effectively. Whereas in other industries, it's not quite like that.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I think I got incredibly lucky and spent 31 years getting lucky. I've worked, I think you're lucky with the people you work with, and I've worked with some fantastic people, and they've probably helped me a lot over the years. And yeah, it's been a fun ride, challenging but good.
So going back to that first day, like the old terminology would have been you're a job, right? And so when you're a job on the first day, what were the tasks that you'd be doing on the first day or the first week? Let's talk about things like ordering breakfast and
Oh yeah, go over the sandwich shop and get 10 bacon rolls, 7 with brown sauce, 2 with red sauce, 1 with an egg, 7 sausage sandwiches, 4 with red sauce, 2 with brown sauce, and the person behind you in the sandwich queue would just go, "Oh, bloody great, here we go." And yeah, and then you go back, and obviously something would be wrong, and yeah, you know, so you'd have to. But one of my favourite. I worked on the futures floor of my went on life on the old exchange floor in the Royal Exchange. Beautiful building now, posh as you like. It was a dive when we were in there. There was rats running around behind the locker and everything. But my boss was a farmer. And he had and he used to do his farming in the morning before he came into work. And one of my jobs was to go to bank station, get his dry clean trousers from the day before, take them to him. He would then take off his trousers that he was wearing at the time, which were covered in cow shit. And then he'd put the new pair on, and then you'd open the bag, and he'd plonk today's pair in, and then you'd take them down the dry cleaners and rinse and repeat 24 hours later. You know, that was the kind of jobs we had to do as runners, as we were called.
Dan?
Yeah, I made the mistake of making quite a good cup of tea. So I spent probably 4 hours of my day making teas and coffees. What I found quite good was my sort of first day. They gave me some colouring pens, and got me to colour in some trade sheets. So it didn't feel that too much different from being at school. Yeah, the office was just Credit DNA Rouse in 1994 was just, it was mental. It was just noise everywhere, people screaming, throwing phones, people on 2 phones, people chugging cigars, people rolling out from under their desks after a boozy night, having to tiptoe around people who'd been out in the pub at lunchtime and try not to wake them up. And yeah, it was absolute carnage. I think trading floors are a little bit different now, Cam.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like things are becoming a lot more sterile. I do. Things are changing, and it's not everything is acceptable. But I do remember when I first started, I had to complete a knowledge test of some sort, and the boys introduced me to, so I was the only girl on the floor, and we were adjacent to a trading floor. They were trading gilts and government bonds, so they were shouting all the time as well. And as I was studying for this test, the guys are like, "Oh, let's go out for lunch." And I thought, how lovely, this is great. What a great job. And actually, it wasn't lunch, it was a pub. And actually, there was no food, it was just beers. And the moment I got back, they got me to do the exam in front of my boss. So all of this bantering and things like that don't really happen as much anymore because, we're sort of being outgrown, and COVID and working from home has calmed everything down. But
Did you pass the exam?
after a while, I did, yes, but not that day. But yeah, no, I think there is such beauty in the industry and all of these little things, and getting breakfast when you're late, and Greg's sausage rolls and all of that. So there's still an element of that, but not as bad as Dan's stories or Colin's.
We'll get to some better stories. So let's have a look at from the mid 80s until now. Obviously, the markets have changed significantly. There's a lot more technology taking the place of people, but people are always, are the markets, right? How has technology changed? Because I know when we spoke before, we were talking about, getting prices from newspapers and CFAX and teletext and having to call someone up to get a price, and people arbing those ideas and so on. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, in 1999, the only way clients could trade was over the phone, and the only way clients could access pricing was if they worked for a bank, so they had Reuters and live pricing, or teletext, which I used to update the prices on teletext. And because we were offering a free phone service, we'd get clients and people who weren't clients who'd phone up wanting prices. So if things weren't too busy, we'd have this regular caller who was a bit of a pest. And what we did was we'd have a little bit of fun with him. So he'd phone up and say, "What's FTSE today?" And you say, "It's up 5 points." And he'd say, "Why is it up?" And you say, "More buyers than sellers." And then he'd say, "What's Sainsbury's today?" And you say, "It's up 2p. Why is it up? More buyers than sellers?" "No, the shops were busy this morning." So you go on to something like, "What about lumber?" And you're like, "Lumber." And you try and find the code and you say it's up 50 points. "Why is it up?" "Oh, it's had a bounce." And then you get back to, "All right, what about orange juice?" And you say to him, "What do you want, the frozen line or the liquid line?" And he'd say the frozen line. And say it's unchanged. And say, "Unchanged? Why is this unchanged?" And you say, "Oh, because it's frozen, sir." And you finally get back to, "Where's FTSE now?" And you say, "Oh, it's flat on the day." And you say, "Why is that? Is that because there's more sellers than buyers, or is it unchanged?" And you say, "No, sir, it's because it's profit taking."
A story that I do like to tell that sort of is, because it sort of illustrates a point, is I did once clear a pub, the Cock and Wall Pack in Finch Lane in London, which I met Dan in for a beer about a month ago. I cleared that pub in 4 seconds with 2 words. I'm very proud of that. Those 2 words were rate cut. And I was a runner on the futures floor. There was a Bank of England emergency rate cut. I was the runner nearest to the door. So I got told, "Go over to Cock and Wall Pack and get everyone back who's having a lunchtime beer. There's been a rate cut." So I ran in, "Rate cut, whole place deserted in 4 seconds. Everybody got back. Now and the reason I still, not just because it's reasonably funny, but it does illustrate how far we've come with respect to getting information. And what's relevant to that from today's point of view is how the playing field is a lot more level now than it was back in those days. You know, those guys got back from the pub in 30 seconds and they were able to trade the futures on the announcement within 30 seconds. It got busier and busier over the next half an hour because the news took a while to filter out to the rest of the market. That's how it was back in the old days. Now, retail and everybody really is on a reasonably level playing field, especially with products like Squawks and things like that that enable and enable you to get information as quickly as the institutions.
Camilla, how have you seen that change because you've been in the industry for like 10 years or so. Have you seen technology change as well in that time?
Yeah, massively. I mean, you still have clients that only want to trade over the phone, but not to the extent of Dan's and Colin. What I think has remained unchanged is, you still have those tricky clients. You still have the importance of that personability and that the relationship that you do build with the client can break you effectively or make you, especially as a salesperson. So that hasn't changed, I think, and I don't think it ever will, irrespective of how technology improves. I mean, I do know that. So before, even 10 years ago, when I used to speak with clients, there used to be a variety of roles that I'd speak to: heads of operation, heads of trading. Now I'm speaking with quants, and they don't really care about being taken out for lunch or going out and the social element. They want to know that the price is right. They want to know, like, they're a lot more analytical. So even in just 10 years, that's changed massively. However, that knowing that there's always someone on the other side of the line, irrespective of how markets are open, is hugely important still, I'd say.
I've been really pleased to see relationship broking survive, to be honest, because I was a broker on the futures on the life floor, and I've set up the technical analysis firm because I thought broking is going to die because everyone's going to do it on computers, and I was wrong. Futures brokers. There's still futures brokers out there in interest rates and the markets that I was involved in, and every market. And now I'm mostly involved in energy markets, and that's a very heavily voice-broked world. But I think at any level, it's really relationship broking is still a thing, and it's still an important thing, but it's definitely more to do with giving them actual things that they need and want rather than just taking them out for a beer.
Yeah, definitely. I think relationships in the past, you always had a lot more time. It's now you don't have the flexibility. I remember one of the worst conversations with clients was always margin calling clients, and clients, they never like being called for money. And we used to have a big punter who was big in financials and also big in sports. And I'd phone him up at 10 o'clock in the morning and say, look, you're on a 25 grand margin call. And he'll say, dear boy, don't worry. There's a horse running in the 230. I've got five grand on it at 10 to 1. When it wins, I'll be paying you 25 grand in the morning. So you'd relay that story to the credit department, which they weren't overly impressed with. So the next morning, you'd phone up and say, the horse didn't win. And he go, no, don't worry. What's the margin call today? And you say, it's 30 grand. And he said, look, this one can't fail to win. If it doesn't rain, this is going to romp home and I'm going to win a load of money. You should have some money on it too. So the next morning I'd look in the paper and it rained, the horse had come nowhere. And I'd phone up and say, look, you're out of luck. And he'd say, what's the margin call? And I say, unfortunately, it's 50 grand. They said, well, you better close my positions then. And clients would do anything not to pay any money in. And that's the way it was then.
So in sales, so you've been in sales for 20 odd years and Camilla for 10 years or so. How's the art of sales changed in that time as well? Because like Clive was talking about, relationship management is still very, very important. And on the retail side and the institutional side, there's still so much done over voice. All the big trades still get done over voice, regardless, kind of if it's institutional or retail. How has the skills changed over time with sales?
Um, I think it's always been understanding the client. I think understanding the client, what the client wants, what the client needs is always the most important thing when it comes to sales. Not over promising, making sure you deliver. They've always been the cornerstones of doing sales properly. The way transactions have changed is 1999, as I said, everything was it was phone based. Today, probably virtually all the trading now is done electronically. So you're there to sort of help if things go wrong, give clients a cuddle if they've lost money, take them out if they've had a good time, and that's normally when they're at their most generous and most happy. But it's really sales hasn't changed too much. The most important thing has always been being honest. And doing your very best for the client. And sometimes your best for a client is to say, look, I'm sorry, we can't help you here or we can't help you here, but where we're very strong is here and here.
Let's talk about alcohol.
I don't drink.
So the city of London is based on alcohol. A lot of the prices and quotes and liquidity that gets flown around happens in a pub. And entertainment is a big thing in relationship management. What are your thoughts on that?
I deny everything. No, I've spent a couple of hours in the pub over my career. Met some very interesting characters, very interesting people. I remember one client we had was a lovely old guy. I don't think he'd ever been taken out before, and we took him out on a boat, and there were some lively characters with us. And during the meal, one of the guys decided it'd be quite good to start playing drinking games. Now, this guy wasn't very good at drinking games, and as I said, I'd spent a couple of hours in the pub, and I was okay. And he was in a bit of a pickle, so we took him back to Cannon Street, which was the local pub. Made sure he'd had a couple more beers and sent him on his way home. I phoned him the next day and his wife answered. And I said, oh, is Derek there? And she said, who's this? I said, oh, it's Dan. Where are you calling from? Finspreads. Was you out with Derek yesterday? I went, yeah. He's not in a very good way, you know. And I said, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. And he said, what time did he leave the pub? And I said, 7 o'clock. And he lived somewhere on the Circle Line. And he managed to get home at 11 o'clock. He'd fallen asleep and spent 4 hours going round and round in circles. And Derek came onto the phone. He was a little bit sheepish. And he said, dear boy, I had a wonderful time with you guys yesterday. But unfortunately, the wife has said, oh, you can't go out with these boys again. And yeah, that was the last time I ever saw Derek.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, drinking is a huge part of the culture. But I was just thinking about your previous question, how sales has changed in the last 10 years. And I guess for me, adding on to what Dan said, which I concur with, obviously, is changing. You know, if you work at a company like CMC that has so many different hats and so many different solutions, I think what happens now in sales is you're having to morph yourself to fit the client that might need that solution. So the FX clients will speak in a certain way, the equities client will speak in a different way, the technology the people that need technology provision will speak in a different way. So you really have to like be a bit of a chameleon or a chameleon in order to sell these days. But I do have lots of drinking stories as well. Mainly walking into the office and seeing guys in the reception that had never left home. But yeah, no, it's definitely a huge drinking culture in FX, especially.
It's, I
The
mean,
FX people are the worst, actually.
I work in equities.
Looking at Sam Horowitz there.
I mean, the fact that we've been up here for 20 minutes and we've all told a pub story might tell you something, but there was we had a runner when I was working for Talent in Tokyo on the live floor who looked so young, we called him Child. And one day Child came round and he went, "I've found this cupboard round the back of the exchange." And we went, "What? What are you talking about?" He went, "It's big enough to sleep in." We were like, "Okay, come on, show us." And and so was born Child's Cupboard, which is where we used to go to sleep in the morning if we'd had a big night the night before. The problem was there was like 20 brokers at the Tullets on the floor, so we'd have to have Child would have a rota, and he'd go, "Right, okay, so no, Johnny's in there at the moment. You're gonna have to wait till 10:30." And you go, "All right, okay, well, get me a coffee then." All right. And so yeah, that was Child's Cupboard. But yeah,
I always found the disabled toilets are quite good because they'd be very wide, and you could get a toilet roll,
No,
put it on the floor, and it acts as quite a good pillow.
you can't admit that on stage, surely.
So talking about like old technologies, because like a lot of people probably haven't worked on in the pits back in the day, right? Can you show people a couple of hand signals and how to quote numbers if you can remember?
Yeah, yeah. Well, you did the prices out the front and the numbers on your head. So if you wanted to buy, and buying was towards you and selling was away for you. So that is selling 50 at 5. And then you'd sell 100 at 8, or you'd pay 8 for 100. And so it was always buy the price into your thing, or 200, 300, 400. Hang on, I'll do it with the 300 at 5, right? Because you'd always have a phone stuck to your ear as well. So I've still got that, haven't I? I can still.
Was that a reusable skill in your later career?
No, not really. I think this is the first time I've done hand signals for a couple of years at least. And yeah, apart from when we were at life reunions and things like that. But yeah, it used to come in useful when you were in the pub actually, because you go, "How many guineas?"
So how many times did you end up in the pubs in Smithfields that used to open up at 4 a.m. with all the meat traders?
Yeah, I mean, not me. I was a good boy.
So sorry, go on, Camilla.
No, I was just thinking that I didn't work in a trading desk, but again, the importance between, especially in sales, bridging the gap between the client and the dealing desk, because at the end of the day, if they're not making money, the company is not making money. So I think that's one of the trickiest thing in sales, or in my role today, is trying to balance clients' needs versus the dealing desk and how much money they're actually making. So,
and I think on that point as well, being on a floor, a sales floor, a trading floor, is actually the volume and the noise, because you know when stuff's going on, because you would feel it. And like on a trading floor, but like before non-farm payrolls, it'd be quiet in the morning.
That was always
everyone
brilliant.
gets sell some lunch, and then there's that anticipation before, and everyone's really excited.
Yeah, I mean, everybody used to. My bun trader used to go over the pub and have 4 vodka and hooches, vodka and hooch, before payrolls.
£1 for every time you say the word pub.
I know, sorry. And everybody would be rushing up the escalators at like 1:25 on a Friday because payrolls is coming out. The whole floor would go completely and utterly quiet, give it a 10-second countdown, and then the whole place would just explode, and it would be busy for the next 2 or 3 hours. And my bun trader had looked like an absolute wreck by the end of it. It was like, no wonder he needed to have a drink just to survive the afternoon, if you like. And volume is a great word, because and you did hear it actually. You do physically hear it on trading floors, when things are busy.
Yeah, I remember non-farm payrolls, and one of my clients was a big trader, and he phoned me about in the morning to say, look, make sure you're not out at lunch today. I need you because I'm going to be doing some trades today. And at 1:15, he'd phone up and say, where's cable, darling? And you make him a price and he'd say, buy me 200. And because he knew I was going to put in my margin call, he'd put the phone straight down. So I'm now left with this position that I'd accepted the trade, so I had to book the trade. And I then would have him on speed dial for the next 15 minutes trying to phone him back. And I knew where he was. He was in the Railway Devon. But he was on a £5 margin. And as we got closer to 1:30, the market was ticking lower. And all of a sudden, he was on like a £20 margin call. And I thought, oh, my God, this is disastrous. Non-farm payrolls come out, market dipped a bit lower and then spiked. And sure as you like, at 31 minutes past 1, he phoned up and said, did I miss anything, darling? And you're like, cheers for that. And fortunately, he'd get out, make some money. But that was kind of the manual. You'd never be able to do that now because systems would block your trade. You wouldn't be able to put it on. But in those days, you kind of knew ways around the system and your clients knew ways around the system.
Yeah, I mean, like compliance wasn't really a word that was used very much in the 80s and the 90s, I've got to be honest. And KYC, and we knew what KFC was, but, you know, there wasn't a huge amount of that going on. And then obviously that's the big, thing in the city in the last 10, 15 years is there's probably as many compliance people on trading floors as there is traders these days.
Yeah, definitely. I was at Rouse in '94.
And obviously you love them all.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful people. But at Rouse in '94, there was probably 200 people on the trading floor, 100 people in the back office. And you walk round and there was 4 people in compliance. And you'd hear someone in compliance say, we really need to get someone in just in case Brian gets run over. And that was compliance. There was 4 people in compliance, 4 people in risk, and mayhem on the trading desk. And it's very different now.
Yeah, you mentioned KFC. I used to know a trader called, his nickname was Chicken because his badge on the floor was mnemonic was KFC. Talking of nicknames, what were your nicknames? I'll go first. Mine was Chinaman. How about you?
I got called Belly for some reason.
Did you have one, or nicknames are kind of dying out by that?
Not one that they used in front of me, maybe behind my back. I don't know, but Cam,
not that you know
Cam.
of.
It's always been Cam.
I can't remember.
Oh, come on. So we got a few minutes. Is there any questions from the crowd? Anything you wanna ask? Any? Yeah, Sean.
Hello. Thank you for interesting panel discussion. By the way, hats off to your dad, Daniel, because I'm that kind of a dad. I do CVs for my kids. I write them, I send them. So hats off to your father.
Thank you.
If you were to remember one day that was probably the best day on the floor, what would that be for you? What was it for you? Thank you.
Not the best day, but definitely the busiest day was Black Wednesday, when interest rates in the UK went from 10% to 12% to 15% to 12% all in one day. And I was it was on the old life floor, and short sterling, used to have a 10 tick range a day, not a 500 tick range a day one way and then the other way. And we used to have a printout of the unmatched trades, which we used to have to try and clean up by the end of every day. Well, we did clean up by the end of every day. Most normal days, you'd print it out. There'd be 3 or 4 lines on each side. You could marry one up against the other, go and speak to somebody and get the trade matched. The day after Black Wednesday, we had Tullets, the firm I was working for. We had a 6-foot-tall mismatch printout, which we had to try and pick the bones out of to match trades up, and that was the day after. And it was also the day I bought my first house. And I bought that house with a floating rate mortgage because there was no such thing as fixed rates back then. So I was moving into my first house thinking, oh shit, I can't afford to live here because I can't afford to pay the mortgage. But then But actually, my thought before that was, thank God I'm not working today because it's going to be absolutely crazy on the floor. So, yeah, it's weird which way round I thought of those two things, but that was definitely more than memorable day.
To be honest, there's been so many days. Everything morphs into one. I think certainly the hardest day was 9/11 and the aftermath of that. That was tough. A horrific time. But what that did do was it brought a lot of people together. There was a lot of camaraderie with clients, with people in the industry, and that was one of the times the industry really was after such a tragic, terrible event. That was a very special time with how people kind of got through that. So, not particularly answering your question because I've had a lot of great times in the pub, a lot of great times entertaining clients, and a lot of good times with people in the office. So, over the years, they kind of melded into one. But the one day that really sticks with me was sort of 25 years ago.
First time I opened my bank account when I got my first commission from a big sales deal was a very happy day for me. But I'm thinking more along the lines of what you were saying, the busiest. I remember during COVID, we were just settling in at home and I never worked from home. I didn't really know. I remember leaving the office with my desktop and setting an office space at home. And Brent and Crude were just all over that place then. I don't know if you remember. And I don't think I got off the phone for like a good 5 to 6 hours. It was like call after call after call. And it just, yeah, it's a moment that I'm never going to forget. That and the commission.
I had a good one in, I think it must be 2002, 2003, when I after I finished trading, I worked as an analyst in the middle of a big trading floor. There was 400 traders all trading futures. I sat in the middle. We were watching all the news and we were squawking. And that's kind of before we ended up doing that as a business. And China revalued their currency. T-notes absolutely crashed. And everyone's trading it as we're shouting the news out. But I'd been studying this because I was quite interested in it for a few months before. And then I said, this is lower than what people expected. And then T-notes had a massive bounce. Every single person on the floor absolutely cleaned up, like making tons and tons of cash. And at that point, I wasn't trading, which was a bit annoying, but I was an analyst. And we went to our boss at the time. And there used to be a cash office on the trading floor. So after you made money, you could go to the cash office and they would just give you cash straight out of a big, massive deposit box. And then so we used to go to our boss. I won't say who he was, but we used to call him Uncle with his name. And I said, Uncle, yeah, everyone made loads of money today, and we're the reason for that. And he goes, what do you want then, lads? I said, Steve. Oh, that was his name. I said, Uncle Steve. Can we get 20 grand to go to Ibiza? Of course you can. We went to the cash office and got some money out and booked a plane to Ibiza. So, yeah, lots of interesting stories. There was another question here. We got 2 minutes.
Be kind, Sam.
I'm always kind. Okay, what's the most scared you were in your early days of your career, guys?
Who, me?
All of you.
He's really scared now. He hates stage.
Honestly, the last time I was on the stage was I think it was 4 years old, and I was a tree. So yeah, it's.
Well, I think he's done rather well, don't you? Well done, mate.
Most scared. I would think when markets are crashing and misbehaving, and you've got clients on margin call, and I've always been a big advocate for the client. I've always been on the client side, so I've never liked seeing clients lose money. Never liked seeing clients owe money. So when markets are tough and clients are struggling, they're the tough days.
I've never been scared on a dealing floor or trading floor, I don't think. But I used 15, 20 years ago, I used to do CNBC. Used to go on the finance on CNBC and talk about charts and stuff. And I remember the first time I ever did that being the scariest moment of my life. The prior one being your driving test. Unfortunately, the guy who was interviewing me was an ex-Life Floor guy, Steve Sedgwick, and he just went, "All right, Clive, how you doing, mate? Don't worry, I'll be nice to you." And I was like, "Oh, thank you." And that was like...
Anything, Camilla? We've got 30 seconds.
Trading on behalf of clients is always a little bit scary, you know, especially when you're doing it the first few times. But I think you always have to be a little bit scared, because then you know that you're making the right decisions and you're thinking things through. So nothing wrong with a bit of fear, yes, and that you care, absolutely.
Okay, so thank you very much, Clive, Camilla, and Dan. As you can see, like, markets are very much about people, and I think some of these stories just kind of shows you there's a lot of humanness behind what's going on when you may be looking at a price on the screen, and definitely if you have to call someone up for a price. So please thank me and give the panel a round of applause.